hppodcraft.com.
We are rolling.
May the merciful gods, if indeed there be such, guard those hours where no power of the will or drug that the cunning of man devises can keep me from the chasm of sleep. Death is merciful, for there is no return therefrom. But with him who has come back out of the nethermost chambers of night, haggard and knowing, peace rests nevermore. Fool that I was to plunge with such unsanctioned frenzy into mysteries no man was meant to penetrate. Fool, or God, that he was my only friend, who led me and went before me, and who in the end passed into terrors which may yet be mine.
By the way, that's frenzy with a PH.
Frenzy with a PH?
Yeah. You know, like you would say something's fat. Frenzy with a PH would be a great name for a Lovecraft-inspired clothing line.
Oh, yeah, I'd like that.
Really classic pieces, but they're all frayed at the edges.
That would be, that was the opening paragraph of Hypnos,
yes.
Story by 1920s and 30s author H.P. Lovecraft.
That's right. And you are now currently listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast, in which we're discussing this story. My name is Chad Pfeiffer.
And I'm Chris Lackey.
And we are at hppodcraft.com.
Well, this is going to be our last podcast of the year.
That's right.
This should be dropping right on New Year's Eve.
That's right. Woo! Hypnos!
We're going to be out of the aughts.
Yeah, that's right. The decade's over.
The decade's over.
People argue about that.
Yeah.
As they did in the last decade. I say it's over. No more aughts. We're in the teens now.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's no more aughts. You wouldn't say aught. You don't say aught 10.
No, you wouldn't.
No, you say aught 9. So
yeah, new decade tomorrow. Now, you said this is the opening paragraph from Hypnos, a short story by Lovecraft that he dedicated in the beginning to S.L.
That would be Samuel Loveman.
Samuel Loveman, whom we've spoken about before. He was in the dreams that inspired the statement of Randolph Carter.
That's right.
And Nyarlathotep.
Yep.
Those two were buddies.
Yeah, there's some parallels to the story with Randolph Carter.
Yeah, definitely. This one is, though, another dreaming kind of story. It starts with a Baudelaire quote, which is,
Apropos of sleep, that sinister adventure of all our nights, we may say that men go to bed daily with an audacity that would be incomprehensible if we did not know that it is the result of ignorance of the danger.
So this is similar to Beyond the Wall of Sleep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of similarities to Beyond the Wall of Sleep and some of the other future works that are going to be coming out from Lovecraft. But right now, Hypnos, though, is about a guy who is a sculptor.
Yes. The story references Hypnos, who in Greek mythology is the personification of sleep.
Yes.
He had this palace, which is this dark cave. There's no sun there. And at the entrance of Hypnos' palace, there's all these plants which have psychoactive properties, like poppy seed plants.
Oh, right, yes, yeah.
But, you know, in that quote from Baudelaire, we're postulating the dreaming is actually accessing another dimension.
Yeah.
A possibly dangerous dimension. And as you say, there's this character, this sculptor.
Uh-huh. Well, what happens is the narrator, the sculptor, he was walking in a railway station one day, and then there's a commotion going on, and there's a guy laying on the ground having a seizure, basically, like freaking out. Everybody's crowded around seeing what's going on. And when he looked at this guy, he was like, whoa, this older gentleman. He was like in his 40s, but he was, beautiful. There's something like kind of cherub-like about his features or pores. He was, well, here's a quote.
I think he was then approaching 40 years of age, for there were deep lines in the face, wan and hollow-cheeked, but oval and actually beautiful, and touches of grey in the thick waving hair and small full beard, which had once been of the deepest raven black. His brow was white as the marble of Pentelicus, and of a height and breadth almost godlike. I said to myself, with all the ardour of a sculptor, that this man was a fawned statue out of antique Hellas, dug from a temple's ruins and brought somehow to life in our stifling age, only to feel the chill and pressure of devastating years. And when he opened his immense, sunken and wildly luminous black eyes, I knew he would be thenceforth my only friend. The only friend of one who had never possessed a friend before, for I saw that such eyes must have looked fully upon the grandeur and the terror of realms beyond normal consciousness and reality, realms which I had cherished in fancy but vainly sought. So as I drove the crowd away, I told him he must come home with me and be my teacher and leader in unfathomed mysteries. and he assented without speaking a word. Afterward, I found that his voice was music, the music of deep viols and of crystalline spheres. We talked often in the night and in the day when I chiseled busts of him and carved miniature heads in ivory to immortalize his different expressions.
The spazzing guy in the railway station has become fast friends with him.
Yeah, very fast.
And
this is in a romantic comedy, you'd call this the meet cute. Where the writers have to get the two characters together somehow. So this is like the worst meet cute ever. I met him while he was having a convulsion in the train station. But for some reason, our guy just like immediately recognized that this was another dream warrior type of guy.
Yeah, this guy's special.
He's special.
Yeah, there's something about him.
And I have to admit, I mean, I was a little weirded out by this when I first read it.
What do you mean?
I didn't quite understand what was going on. So he came into the train station, this guy's freaking out, he looked at him and he's like, I knew that this would be my only friend.
Yeah, that is a really strange thing. Well, the narrator in the beginning says that he doesn't have many friends. He lives kind of a solitary life. It's really weird that you would just see somebody and go, yeah, he's going to be my friend.
I mean, I went through a phase, that's phase with a PH, by the way, when I was in junior high or something like that, where I was like into my dreams and trying to control my dreams. And I thought a lot about lucid dreaming. And I had a friend that was doing the same thing. We were both keeping dream journals and trying to be lucid dreamers.
Wow.
So I can kind of I remember what that was like. Now I think of dreams, I don't think of them, actually.
Right, yeah.
I go to sleep, occasionally I wake up and think, wow, that was a crazy dream. But I was sort of obsessed with it for a while without having read Lovecraft.
Sure.
But I don't know if I'd pick up a cute little 40-year-old bearded guy in a train station. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. It is strange, and it kind of struck me as an immature crush almost, like.
Yeah, I mean, he just fell in love with this guy.
But it's a little weird, you know.
Yeah.
And then they go back and they talk into the night, and then they just.
And then they begin what he calls their
experiments.
Their experiments.
Yeah.
He says,
of our studies, it is impossible to speak, since they held so slight a connection with anything of the world as living men conceive it.
Okay, so we won't speak about details, but we know that they were doing, they're doing dream experiments.
They're going to sleep, and then they're going into another world. This is very similar to kind of Beyond the Wall of Sleep stuff.
Exactly. He and this bearded guy now, they move in together. They're living in Kent. He describes it as Hoary Kent.
Hoary Kent, which is south-east England, so it's a little southeast of London, actually.
Right, and hoary gets used a lot. I mean, in Lovecraft's fiction, it just means very old.
Yeah,
but it does make a place sound pretty awful. You know, I really don't think that that's on any of Kent's tourist brochures. Welcome to Kent,
Hoary Kent,
the hoariest place on earth. They're living in this tower studio chamber together, and you get the sense, or he even kind of says it, they've both tried limited kind of dream researches before with limited amounts of success. Now they're going to try it out together.
Yeah.
And this is going to help. And there was something in this paragraph that puzzled me. He talks about how a lot of wise men have interpreted dreams, but they can't even really suspect what's really out there.
Right.
And he says, one man with oriental eyes has said that all time and space are relative, and men have laughed. But even that man with oriental eyes has done no more than suspect. Is he talking about Confucius, or is it Buddhism, or there's a lot of Asian philosophy that there is no time and space. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, relativity made me think of Einstein, but Einstein doesn't have oriental eyes.
I know. I mean, if I think oriental eyes, I think Peter Sellers. Maybe. He's like a white guy always putting oriental eyes on.
I really don't understand this. It really did confuse me too.
Maybe he's talking about that song "Turning Japanese."
He probably is not talking about that song.
That's one I think we got to turn over to the audience, because I didn't quite know if there's a specific Asian philosopher he's talking about.
Yeah, no, or maybe because Einstein was old and he kind of droopy eyes that it looks somewhat Asian to Lovecraft. I don't know.
I think he means an Oriental guy or an Asian person.
Right.
And that's just his cute way of saying it, but
yeah, I don't know, and it seems strange to me that Lovecraft would reference any Eastern metaphysical kind of thing, because he wasn't into that. He was a man of science.
Yeah, I also that he would mention it not with derision, but with these people who are the closest of
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, what was the story where he said that if you're taking opium, you start to go back through Asian history? That was the one we did with Ken Hite. Nyarlathotep, or the Crawling Chaos.
The Crawling Chaos?
The Crawling Chaos, yeah, right? If you take these drugs, you can go back through these ages. So there is some precedence in the stories to talking about
right
Oriental history. Anyway, in the dreaming that these two guys are working on, our protagonist runs into a problem that I have on this show all the time.
Among the agonies of these after days is that chief of torments, inarticulateness. What I learned and saw in those hours of impious exploration can never be told, for want of symbols or suggestions in any language. Human utterance can best convey the general character of our experiences by calling them plungings or soarings. For in every period of revelation, some part of our minds broke boldly away from all that is real and present, rushing aerially along shocking, unlighted and fear-haunted abysses, and occasionally tearing through certain well-marked and typical obstacles, describable only as viscous, uncouth clouds or vapors.
Yeah, that's kind of some cool imagery and description. It's
Some From Beyond stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Which From Beyond is a little related to this, too. There's the master and the student kind of figure.
Right, yeah.
And introducing him to other dimensions, and one is ready to go a little further than the other.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's, again, Randolph Carter. It's Herbert West.
It's the other gods.
It's the other gods.
There's the other guy that'll go further. And he says, when they go through these soarings or these plungings, the friend is always a bit ahead. He's always kind of trying to get away with a little more.
Yeah. Now, one of the big things that when they were doing this, when they were awake, they weren't aging.
Right.
Which was pretty insane and trippy. That they were doing this for a long time, and at no point did they ever age. They somehow, doing these dream journey interdimensional quests, were keeping them youthful.
Yeah, he says that, time becomes an illusion to them, and partly because of the fact that they're not aging. But our guy is pretty much in it for the research and the discovery, and he just wants knowledge. But this cute little bearded guy, he's got more of a supervillain bent to him.
He does.
My friend once wrote on paper a wish which he dared not utter with his tongue, and which made me burn the paper and look affrightedly out of the window at the spangled night sky. I will hint, only hint, that he had designs which involved the rulership of the visible universe and more, designs whereby the earth and the stars would move at his command, and the destinies of all living things be his. I affirm, I swear, that I had no share in these extreme aspirations. Anything my friend may have said or written to the contrary must be erroneous, for I am no man of strength to risk the unmentionable warfare in unmentionable spheres by which alone one might achieve success.
Man, so
wow,
so little bearded man's getting a little power crazy.
Yeah, I know. He again, it's the other gods. It
is the other gods.
I'm going to go further, and I'm going to see the stuff, and then I'm going to master everything.
Well, and it's Herbert West. Pushing forward, wants that at any cost. Yep. That power. That
and Crawford Tilly, yeah.
Yeah.
Commonality among all these figures is they're all punished for it.
Yes.
Always punished.
Yes.
This also reminds me of Beyond the Wall of Sleep in that there's some battling to be done in these dream realms, which references there. Mm-hmm. And you'll remember in that story, the other man, the dreamer, was being pursued or pursuing this demon star, Algol.
That's correct, yeah.
And in a bit, we'll talk about it. There's some constellation action going on
there
in
is.
as well.
Yeah.
But what happens is that the bearded guy goes further than our protagonist one night.
Yeah. And he tries to follow him, but he can't. He hits some kind of invisible wall.
Yeah, it's this obstacle that he can't penetrate, even though he knows his friend made it pass. And again, he's weak, he's held back. The other guy goes forward, and then he's just left to kind of wait and find out what happened. He wakes up and he sees that his buddy is still sleeping, but then his buddy wakes up and screams.
Right,
and that makes our guy faint.
So this guy finally, this is kind of the other gods, he's glimpsed some stuff that he wasn't ready for, and it freaked him out.
And when they both wake up, it freaks him out, and I think it's really funny that chain of events. Our protagonist wakes up, his buddy's sleeping, his buddy wakes up, he looks at him, he faints, then his buddy wakes him up. I was thinking about this the other day because there's that, we haven't gotten to it yet, but there's that Houdini ghost-written story that Lovecraft did.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I know that Houdini liked that story, but his big problem with it was that Lovecraft had him faint in it.
Right, yeah.
He's like, I'm Houdini, I don't faint. People put me in a box filled with water, I'm in there for 10 minutes, and I get out, and I don't faint, Who are you? I just, it made him so mad. Lovecraft's like, wait, everybody doesn't faint? I thought that was, faint 2-3 times a day. Well, so anyway, whatever that guy saw freaked him out. Uh-huh. Whatever was in his eyes freaked our guy out, and they say, that's it. Dream research over.
Yeah. And they go, not only is dream research over, we're going to try and not sleep as much as possible. and they start taking drugs to help them stay
Exactly.
awake. And
It reminds me of Patricia Arquette in the beginning of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or whatever one she was in. She's like drinking coffee and putting sugar in it and building little model houses of Elm Street. Anything to stay awake.
which is what I would do.
But it flips now. So they can't help it. They do sleep an hour or 2 hours
at a time.
And when that happens, they get
older. They start aging quickly. He says like almost before his eyes, he can see him aging.
Yeah. It actually reminded me, and this is the drug thing, man. Like I read a Time magazine expose of crystal meth when that was the new dangerous drug, and all of the photos in it would be, there'd be this picture of somebody. It would look like Judi Dench, and they'd say, "This woman's 19 years old." What? It was so shocking, though. People would start taking meth, and then 2 years later, they would just be the crypt keeper.
Right?
They would age so much.
Right. But I think what it also he's saying is that their connection with this timelessness is being lost because they're not, doing their things. But also, so the bearded man, to kind of keep vital, basically, and he didn't like being alone anymore. So they would go out and find young revelers and people to hang out with all the time.
At night he would not be alone, nor would the company of a few persons calm him. His sole relief was obtained in revelry of the most general and boisterous sort, so that few assemblies of the young and the gay were unknown to us. Our appearance and age seemed to excite in the most cases a ridicule which I keenly resented, but which my friend considered a lesser evil than solitude. Especially was he afraid to be out of doors alone when the stars were shining, and if forced to this condition he would often glance furtively at the sky, as if hunted by some monstrous thing therein.
So basically these two old guys are crashing young people's parties, and that's awesome, because it made me think of your story.
Yeah, when we talked about the outsider.
When we talked about the outsider, when you came over to the young people's house and everybody was giving you weird looks and stuff.
Guy? Yeah. But I imagine in my head they both are like, they have old man masks on. They're that old,
They're really old guys.
But young bodies. They're like that terrible Six Flags commercial with that old man dancing. Yeah,
that guy, yeah.
It freaks me out.
It's
Is that just local, or does everybody see that thing?
I hope it's local.
That
so
guy
the
looks
world
like
does
Junior
not...
Soprano, and he's dancing around like MC Hammer. It's horrible. So awful.
Junior Soprano.
We'll put a link up so people know what we're talking
about.
I'm
It's
sure.
Hopefully it is just local, and
I hope
and
so.
Other people in the country have not been exposed to that.
That ad is Lovecraftian. Nothing in it makes sense.
But anyway,
the protagonist notices that what the guy is looking at is a constellation.
Yeah. The Corona Borealis.
Yeah, the David Boreanaz.
What?
No. You read something and in your head you think that. For some reason, every time I read Corona Borealis, I thought that. And this is the thing that seems to be stalking him, just like in Beyond the Wall of Sleep.
Right. Well, do you know about the Corona Borealis?
I don't know anything about it.
It's also known as the Northern Crown. The Corona Borealis was sometimes considered to be represent the crown given by Dionysus to Ariadne, the daughter of Minos of Crete. And if you recall, she is the lady that helps out the fella with the Minotaur. The
Theseus?
Yeah, Theseus.
I didn't recall that, but
there you go.
No idea. Yeah, well, so there's lots of Hellenic legend.
Oh yeah, well Lovecraft likes his Greek myth.
I know that this whole show so far has just been recounting of other stories, but the tree,
this is definitely a lot of tree stuff in there.
Our Grecian sculptors. Well, the guys have moved to London since they gave up the dream researches.
Yeah.
And they've holed up in a studio all old and poor. They've sold everything they own.
Yeah.
The narrator is keen to point out that he's sold his sculptures.
Yeah.
They're spending this money on drugs that keep them from sleeping more than an hour or two here and there. And finally they run out of money, they run out of drug, and the friend falls asleep.
Yep.
When he does fall asleep, our guy watches over him. Now, the Corona Borealis is in the northeast, and our protagonist seems to hear this whine from off in the distance from the constellation.
But it was not that distant whine which robbed me of my faculties and set upon my soul such a seal of fright as may never in life be removed. Not that which drew the shrieks and excited the convulsions which caused lodgers and police to break down the door. It was not what I heard, but what I saw, for in that dark, locked, shuttered, and curtained room there appeared from the black northeast corner a shaft of horrible red-gold light, a shaft which bore with it no glow to disperse the darkness, but which streamed only upon the recumbent head of the troubled sleeper.
Now, in this light, our guy sees not only the face of his friend, but also this sort of dream face.
Yeah.
His dream representation.
Yeah.
Earlier in the text, he called it his memory face, and that's when they're traveling in dreams. That's sort of how he knows it's his buddy.
Yeah.
He sees this like youthish, like his face.
Right. But it's not, it's sort of dreamlike. But basically, the big deal here is he's awake and he's seeing this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's crossing through time and space and all of those.
Whatever
things.
it is, it's coming from the northeast. It's this strange light. It doesn't seem to be casting a glow anywhere else.
Yeah.
And as I looked, I beheld the head rise, the black, liquid and deep sunken eyes open in terror, and the thin shadowed lips part as if for a scream too frightful to be uttered. There dwelt in that ghastly inflexible face, as it shone bodiless, luminous, and rejuvenated in the blackness, more of stark, teeming, brain-shattering fear than all the rest of heaven and earth has ever revealed to me. No word was spoken amidst the distant sound that grew nearer and nearer. But as I followed the memory face's mad stare along that cursed shaft of light to its source, the source whence also the whining came, I too saw for an instant what it saw, and fell with ringing ears in that fit of shrieking and epilepsy which brought the lodgers under police. Never could I tell, try as I might, what it actually was that I saw, nor could the still face tell, for although it must have seen more than I did, it will never speak again. But always I shall guard against the mocking and insatiate Hypnos, lord of sleep, against the night sky, and against the mad ambitions of knowledge and philosophy.
Man.
People show up, as he said.
Oh, yeah, because he's flipping out, and this is going on, and the neighbors show up, and then they call the police, and the police show up, and, they finally... He passes out from this.
He has a fit. Well, he says he has some kind of, like, epileptic shrieking fit, so he just
when
goes
he comes
nuts.
to, when he comes to, or he realizes, the police are around, and they're like, hey, buddy, what's...
And he can't tell exactly what's taking place.
No.
He does suffer from a shocking revelation.
For they deny that I sold the last of my statuary, and point with ecstasy at the thing which the shining shaft of light left cold, petrified, and unvocal. It is all that remains of my friend, the friend who led me on to madness and wreckage, a godlike head of such marble as only old Hellas could yield, young with the youth that is outside time, and with beauteous bearded face, curved smiling lips, Olympian brow, and dense locks waving and poppy-crowned. They say that haunting memory face is modelled from my own, as it was at 25. But upon the model base is carven a single name in the letters of Attica.
Yeah.
And Hypnos is written in Greek letters.
It's written in Greek letters, yeah. And Attica is a subsection of Greece. It's where Athens and stuff is. So.
Yeah. And that's the end of the story.
That's the end of the story. There was one line in here that I really liked previous to that, where the people, the police and the people around him, they tell him... When he asks about his friend, like, what's going on with your friend? They say, they have said, I know not for what reason, that I never had a friend, but that of art, philosophy, and insanity had filled all my tragic life. Like, who says that?
Yeah.
That's terrible. Like who was this cop that said, you never had a friend, but art, philosophy, and insanity? Nobody said that.
Yeah, it was Lenny Briscoe from Law and Order. Listen, pal, you don't have any friends.
You don't have any friends. The only friends are art, philosophy, and insanity. Only things that filled your tragic life. That was a good one. I really like that. So this story was published, or it was penned in March 1922, but published in 23 in the National Amateur.
All right.
Still not getting paid.
Love
that.
And he had written in his notes, or in his commonplace book, a note that said, the man who would not sleep, dares not sleep, takes drugs to keep himself awake, finally falls asleep, and something happens.
Yeah, that was his inspiration for this.
That's the germ.
The germ for this story. And I got to say that there's definitely a lot of Beyond the Wall of Sleep in here. That's kind of, it's almost like, you can almost say it's like a sequel or in the same universe as Beyond the Wall of Sleep. But there's a lot of, Greek sculpture reference, which is the tree.
Yeah.
And
what happened? I mean, what is this about? What happens in it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It seems like he made up his friend. His friend wasn't real. It was him all along. Because if the statue looked like him when he was young, and then he kind of looked like him when he was young, but he was in his 40s, So I think it was just the insanity of this artist and all these things that he was doing was just kind of some aspect of himself. Other people talk about it as maybe it's literal. Like there was a guy, and the guy who went too far was taken out of reality and punished by the god Hypnos.
Ah, I see.
And like that was like, Hypnos' warning
To turn him to stone, to marble.
Yeah,
It's a
basically.
very Greek punishment.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that's like Hypnos' warning to him. It's like, you keep doing what you're doing, boom,
Yeah.
and you're going to get some of that. But I think...
I do think it would be interesting, though, if it was a split Fight Club kind of split personality deal.
Yeah.
Because then, at least this time in the protagonist, he's not this pathetic follower.
Right.
But he's both.
Right.
He's that aspect of himself, but he's also this more adventurous person.
Which is a lot more interesting for Lovecraft. It's fine. He's stepping out of this kind of repeating thing that we keep talking about. So
right.
that if that is the case, that's really cool, and it is sort of a Tyler Durden, which again bringing up on this podcast, sort of thing. Where he was sort of a meek guy, and then his alternate personality did all the stuff that he really wished that he could.
Yeah, and maybe he literally sculpted what he wanted. This, it's him, it's his face.
Right.
But that's the thing that he's throwing those aspects of himself into.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because he's lonely and this research that he's doing. I mean, it's like a lot of those other Dreamland stories where it usually is a very lonely person who's sickened by life, and so they retreat into their dreams and they retreat into their sleep selves. And he's doing this so much that he's even created a little friend for himself to go along with it.
Yeah. And who would have guessed Lovecraft would have written about something like this?
Well, now, I don't think it was Lovecraft's intention, and especially since Hypnos has all those poppy plants outside of his dwelling, this did almost seem like a picture of Dorian Gray kind of cautionary tale to me, in a way, about drugs.
Oh.
Because,
I
our
can see
protagonist is seeking that deep shift in perception that drugs bring. I mean, he references drugs constantly.
Yeah.
That they have to do the type of dream research that these guys want to do. They take these exotic drugs to change, open these doors of perception.
Right.
And he gets more and more strung out, and then part of him goes somewhere horrified.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it all, he's old and he's worn out, and he's almost worshiping at this statue of himself when he was young. All that he's lost because of this pursuit for enlightenment through these forbidden means. Again, I don't think that was Lovecraft's intention, but I find the story works on a much more interesting level when you look at it that way. The deep costs, and this is a theme in all Lovecraft. There's a cost that's associated with seeking out, knowledge. And in this case, it was a very heavy physical toll that was taken through the use of drugs. Or I remember, this is kind of a different association, but David Gahan, the lead singer of Depeche Mode,
sure, yeah.
I was reading a recounting of when he was strung out on heroin, and he said that he lived in this little apartment in Santa Monica, and there was a Bugs Bunny stuffed animal that he had that was like his best friend that he talked to all day, and he had a couple of stuff, but he would like watch the Weather Channel, and then he would go in and check in with his bunny friend, and they talked for a while, and he had this whole relationship with him. This is before he tried to commit suicide.
Wow.
So, I mean, things like that happen,
I guess so. But yeah, I do have to say that does make it a little bit more interesting of a story if it is kind of a cautionary tale of drug use, specifically like heroin or opiates.
Opium, yeah.
So this was written in March, I said, 1922. Mm-hmm. Just a little historical context and also what's going on with Lovecraft. At this point in his life, we haven't really been talking about this much. We kind of been jumping into the stories quite a bit. But he's met Sonia Green, and they've started a relationship. They're not married yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But Lovecraft doesn't write much about his courtship with her, or there isn't much evidence left.
Right. We don't really know. I mean, how did they meet?
They met at a conference in Boston. I think it was in Boston.
And this is Sonia Green, for people who are listening. This show only is his future wife. They get married.
Yeah, they're going to get married. And so this is the point. This is after his mother died, which was in the summer of 21, and now we're kind of, it's almost a year ago. So he's been with Sonia Green, but we don't know exactly what happened in their relationship, like how their courtship went or what exactly was going on.
Right.
Because he didn't really write about it, or if he did write about it, there are no letters to tell us that he did. So, but some other interesting things in March of 1922, Nosferatu came out in the theater. It was the year that movie was released.
F.W. Murnau film.
Yes, which is a favorite of mine. And also good old Gandhi was arrested in Bombay for sedition. So that was also going on in the world at large there. So the British were still, rocking India.
you have anything else?
No, well, our reader, Stephen Day Clark, and I'd like to thank him. He did a great job, and he's awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, great job, great stuff. And just want to let people know we still have a few of those CDs left.
Yes.
We had said if you donate $20 or more before the end of the year that you'll get one of those. This is the last day of the year. However,
yeah,
look, the deadline's getting moved a little bit. We've got a few of these left. So
yeah.
If you want to donate over the next couple of weeks, we'll be sure to ship you a CD.
Yeah, we're not going to stiff you on nothing. But hopefully we're going to have a new offer for you in next year.
Very soon.
So
when we so this will end when we figure out what that is.
Exactly. Next week we are doing a tour, another tour.
Another double feature.
A double feature, What the Moon Brings, which is very short, and Azathoth.
Azathoth.
Man, we're getting into some freaking outer god stuff.
That's right. I want to wish everybody the best New Year's Eve. Hope you have a great time. Be safe. Remember the lesson of Hypnos, though, man. Don't go too far.
Take it
You'll
easy.
end up old and creepy in a room with a statue of you.
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Chris Lackey.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And this has been the HP Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
HPPodcraft.com. Yeah!
HPPodcraft.com